The past year and a half has been really hard and really challenging for lots of different reasons. And we could just say, COVID. We could say that. But as I've said several times publicly, I don't know how much COVID actually affected church life as much as it revealed a lot of aspects of church life that may need a bit tweaking, that may be a little bit wonky. So I think, like Gideon, on a Sunday that we're calling Vision Sunday, I think that's a really great place to start by asking this: God, where are you? Because we've been doing this week in and week out for a long time, and I don't know about you, but I'll just be honest. I will put myself on the chopping block. There have been more weeks than one where I have just thought, where is the fruit of this ministry? What are we doing here? Where are the lost people? Where are the people far from God? Where are all the baptisms? And where are all of those things? What are we doing here? Katy, Texas is a wonderful, wonderful place, but it is filled with all kinds of darkness that needs to be pushed back. Where are we pushing back? What are we doing? And as I ask myself this, most days, just like Gideon, I find myself saying, God, where are you? What are you doing? And my first thought is, well, maybe he's just not here. Maybe this time is over. Maybe this chapter has concluded. Maybe he's moved on somewhere else and we need to move on somewhere else. But I don't think that's true. In fact, I think that's a lie. I think God is working and has been working inside of this community since March 2018. And so when we ask ourselves, hey, how has God been moving and working inside of this community? This is not an exhaustive list, but I think it's a list that we need to rehearse more than we do. We need to rehearse this list of things that God has done in the past 4 years, just to know that we have not been abandoned, that we're not alone. We have seen people come to Christ. I have seen more people come to Christ from a variety of ages and backgrounds and demographics through this congregation than I have ever seen in my entire life at another church. That's not a point of bragging. I hope you know my heart well enough. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that's just ridiculously amazing. It is so wonderful, and it's such a great opportunity. Anyways, that's one of the ways in which God has worked. But not only that, not only people coming to Christ, people coming back to Christ, people giving the church a second chance who never thought, after being treated the way they were with one particular Christian or organization or ministry or even church, they gave up on the church. We've had several people come back and give church a second time. But not only that, the friendships that have forged in this community have been lasting, have been special, and have been incredibly unique. Babies have been born. Weddings have been performed. Kids have taken their first communion. Babies have been baptized. And next week we'll see a continuation of that. We have partnered with local and international ministries and churches. We have volunteers have stepped up and taken ownership of various aspects of the ministry. We've seen people open their homes and participate in hospitality where that wasn't even on their radar prior to being a part of this community. We've seen you people, being incredibly generous with your finances. We've seen people tithing for the first time in their life. We've seen people share their faith for the first time in their life. We've survived a pandemic. We've survived a major move. We have most definitely helped keep the lights on at No Label. We've hired on faith, trusting God, following his direction, in a day when most churches are figuring out how to deduce their staff. We've increased. We brought on Troy to be a church planting resident. That's a big deal. And also akin to that, we sent out an international missionary, our first, hopefully of many, international missionaries. So to that end, I have a very special treat for you today, because while Helen couldn't be here, she did send a video that she wanted you guys to watch.
Hey guys, it's Helen. I am filming a video for you because Pastor Nathan asked me to, and just wanted to fill you in. Hey guys! It's Helen. I am filming a video for you because Pastor Nathan asked me to, and just wanted to fill you in on some things that I've been doing. So I am now in the outreach stage of my DTS, which means that every day my team is going out and we're doing some form of ministry. So I'm in a team of 7 others. We're all from all over the world. We have Norway, France, New Zealand, Canada, Tajikistan. It's a weird mix. And then a few of us are from America. 1 other is from Texas, so whoop whoop. We every day go out and do different things. So we've been to Budapest, where we did homeless ministry a lot. Then we were there for about 3 weeks. Then we went to Warsaw, and we were there for 2 weeks, and we did refugee work at a refugee center that housed 3,000 people. And that was a really eye-opening and heartbreaking experience, but it was so cool to see how God is still good, even in those times. Now we're in Italy, and everything's kind of up in the air. Yesterday we went into Rome and did some evangelism and met with people and talked with people, and we're going to do the same every day. And so every day, like, the goal is to just get out there and share what God is doing with other people and share how God sees them. So my team has been doing well. There are some needs for me personally. One of them obviously is going to be prayer. So pray that I and the team have strength and unity to go forward and continue. We have about 1 more month of outreach, in which we'll be in Italy, maybe Barcelona or Madrid. We haven't decided yet. And then we'll be doing 2 weeks on a trail called El Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage in Spain and Portugal. And it ends up in this town where one of the apostles was believed to die. But it is going to be 2 weeks of hiking and walking. So pray that we have unity and strength in that, and that our team wouldn't fall apart during that. Rather, they would go stronger. And obviously, pray for continued revelation of God's character and for open hearts in the people that we meet. Also, additionally, I am in need of some additional finances to cover extra expenses like medicine and food. Those things have kind of snuck up. And then also we're in Italy now, which is extremely expensive. So if you find it on your heart to give to me, that would be much appreciated. I can get you in contact with all my things and my Venmo, PayPal, whatever. Everything works here. So that'd be great. I'm looking for about $100 to $200 to carry me through to the end. But yeah, I miss you guys so much, and I'm so grateful to have you all supporting me and constantly reaching out. It really means a lot, and I'm so blessed to know you and to have you all, and I can't wait to come back and talk to you guys and share what's been done.
When I watched it the first time, I thought, how awesome would that be if the Apostle Paul had like Venmo, PayPal, right? Well, never mind, I'm sorry. I show you that for one thing so you can see what Helen is up to, but also in this regard, like, understand this, the way that gospel ministry works, that those of you who have partnered with Helen financially through prayer, like, your efforts and faithfulness are being multiplied across the world, in which you will never know the full impact of your finances, or your praying, or you're just supporting Helen to be able to do the work that God's called her to do. Like, you and I will never know the final impact of that. So there may be a time in which, when this life is over, and you're standing before the King of Glory, and you meet someone who comes up to you and says, "Man, thank you so much for sending Helen." See, things like that and ministries like that, opportunities like that, don't come amongst a congregation in which God is not moving and working and doing something. God has been doing great things. He's going to continue to do great things. And I think if we're honest for a second, because I don't want to oversell you, I am not a salesperson at all, a little bit. I am not a network marketer. I don't do any of those things. So I want to be encouraging, but also truthful at the same time. And I think at times it's felt like God is not in this work that we're doing. I mean, because again, like I said, I'll say it again, the past few years have been hard. We've seen families leave. We've having to cut back on different ministries, for spending or for just people burning out or things like that. Like ministries that have defined us, like groups and those things since our inception. We've had to push the pause on those things, and I know that it's been hard. It's been hard for me, and I know it's been hard for you as well. But more than that, there's just been, for the past year or so, it feels like there's been like this fog where there's not a clear sense of direction, there's not a clear sense of leaning, there's not a clear sense of where we're going or who we're going to be. And I think it's okay to be honest about that. But I also want to put something else in the hopper. What if losing families over the past 4 years, let's just say, what if losing families, the general sense of fog that we've been experiencing, suspending certain ministries, what if those were not evidence that God has abandoned Haven? Instead, rather, what if they were evidence of his direct involvement with Haven? Like, what if these past years of seemingly limping along have been part of God's leading us on a new path in which we would not nor could not be on if we didn't experience the things that we've experienced in the past? Like, what if the things that we were planning and being, what if this past year and a half has been God crucifying those things so that he can raise to life something that's even more beautiful, more precious than we could ever explain, dream of, or even imagine? What if the past year is not evidence of God's abandonment? Well, what if it's evidence of him being directly involved, taking this church to its next chapter? See, while Gideon is hiding from his enemies, he's stuck in this vicious work cycle, going over and over, wondering where God is at, trying to figure out. And when God comes to him, did you notice what God says to Gideon? While Gideon is showing these characteristics essentially of a coward who's hiding from his enemy, did you notice how God approaches him? He calls him, "O mighty man of valor." Which characteristically, if we're just going on this story alone, or what we know about Gideon so far, like he's not protruding mighty man of valor. Like this is not necessarily part and parcel to how he's being described, but in 4 to 5 words, God is literally re-envisioning Gideon. He's telling him who he is and what he's going to do. And so while the circumstances that Gideon is going about aren't going to change, he's still going to have to thresh. He's still going to have to work hard. But his relationship to those situations will change because God's calling him to something different, to be something different. So the question, I think, that follows, God, where are you, really is this, like, God, where are you taking this thing? Where are you taking us? If we look at verse 14, in Judges chapter 6. We read this, "And the Lord turned to him and said, Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of the Midians, from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you?" And he said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, watch this, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man." Like, God in no way, shape, form, or fashion, regardless of what Gideon believes or feels, has abandoned him. God has not abandoned him. He's been working alongside him his entire life, cultivating him for this very special task and position for him to walk into. And I love Gideon's response, again, in unbelief. He's like, "God, you have the wrong person." He begins to tell him his resume. "I'm the weakest in all of my clan. I'm even the weakest in my father's house. Like, I have people living around me, and I have people in my own family that are more qualified to do this task than me. Like, God, obviously you have the wrong person. I'm tired. Nothing I've done has gone as expected. There are so many better people suited for this particular task that you need done." But notice what the Lord says to him. He says to him twice in 2 different ways. The first is this, "Gideon, do I not send you?" Gideon, I don't care how many more people you think are qualified than you. I don't care how many more people have a nicer resume than you do. Gideon, this is the task that I have been dreaming for you since before you were born. This is what the work is for you, Gideon. Gideon says, I can't do this. But God says, and I know you can do it. Why? Not because you're so great, because you are right. You are the weakest in your tribe and in your father's house. But you know what? I will be with you. He says, I will be with you, and this is the secret sauce. This is how he's able to do it. I think when you look at Haven's profile, not necessarily like social media profile, I mean like when you look at our composition, it would be very easy to relate to Gideon on so many different levels. It is really easy to relate to Gideon on so many different levels. Like we're a small little congregation who meet at weird times and in someone else's space. It's like if we're really honest, like aren't there other churches that could assume serving and loving and pushing back the darkness in Katy better than us? But the answer is this, resoundingly, no. And I don't mean that in a sense in which we are the savior of Katy, Texas. That's not what I'm saying. Listen, I've said it a million times. You all are great people. We are all terrible saviors. So no, I'm not saying we're the only local expression of the church that can help aid and serve and love this community in which God's placed us. But we play a significant part that no other church can play. We play a role in reaching an audience and a people that no one else can reach. Like this is who God has called us to reach. And there's not a whole lot of momentum of people chasing the people that we connect easily with. They're in our wheelhouse. It's just not there. And that's not a slight to any other church by any means whatsoever. It's not a promotion to us. It's who God has made us to be. This is the work that he's given us to do. I want to take you back just a second. Now, some of this will be easier for some and it'll be harder for others, but just bear with me. For a second, I want to take you back to your first experience you had with this particular community. Maybe it was a no-label night, maybe it was a small group, maybe it was a worship gathering. But I want you to take you back to that moment, and I want to ask you, what about that experience stuck with you? What about that experience made you say, I think I'm going to give these people another shot? Or I think a community like this would have an impact on my life. Maybe it was just that. Maybe it was the warmth of the community. Maybe it was the way we kind of just approach ministry, kind of accessible, vulnerable. But here's what I want you to think about, and I've been thinking about it myself as well. Listen, here's the reality. Whatever it was that got you to stick, to stay, to convince you to join this community, is still true about this community. It's still true. It's still very much true. Like, you're here today because God has met you in the midst of this ministry. That he has shown you his beauty in Christ. He has forged new relationships in your life. And which means that he has been changing you more and more into the likeness and image of his own Son. And my friends, there's 1,000 more people per person represented here in Katy, Texas, who deserve the same opportunity and experience. They deserve the same thing. Thousands of people. So my question really is this. If Haven hasn't really changed, as far as our rhythms, culture, we really haven't changed. What's changed, though, is you and me. We've changed. We've come in, most of us have come in because we've been hurt by the church to some degree or the other. Or we've given up on church, or we were always kind of wishy-washy about Christianity. And I don't mean that in a negative sense whatsoever. I just mean that we needed a place to kick the tires and see if this thing was real, to see if Christians were really real or if they were just mean people like we thought. And somehow, we connected with the community here. And over the course of time, being inside this ecosystem has changed you and I to where our needs are different. Our needs have evolved. It's not that what Haven is doing is any different than we've ever done it, but we're different. We need different things. So it's not that Haven has changed, it's that we have. And so going forward, we have to take that into consideration. What we needed from Haven in the beginning, by God's grace, we don't need as much anymore. But there's something else that we need. We still need each other. We still need to hear the gospel. We still need a place where it's okay not to be okay. And to yet be encouraged to be courageous and follow where God's leading. But in the same way, to the same degree, in a real sense, you and I have been healed. And now the invitation is for us to consider ourselves healers. It's time for the students of Haven to become the teachers of Haven. It's time for the consumers of Haven to become owners of this ministry. So how do we do that? How do we do that? I think we stand in a real way at a crossroads. And the crossroads really is this. We have two, and I'm going to say it like this, we have two really good paths before us. One path is that we celebrate what God has done at Haven. We thank God for all the friendships that we have, but we recognize that this chapter is over, that this chapter is done. We keep the memories, we keep the photos, but we all just go our separate ways. That is not a bad option. That is a great option. But there's also another option. And that option is this, that we recognize that God has done this work in you and me, that we might be a better conduit for him to help him do the work inside someone else that desperately needs it. It's a shift from changing our disposition to Haven is something that I consume because it's good for me, to Haven is something that I own because it's good for someone else like me. Do you see the difference? From the very get-go, I could not have been more crystal clear about, if we start this church, I do not want Christians. I wanted straight up nothing but the whatever non-Christians Katy, Texas could offer. And we did it, and it was awesome, and it was insane. And like people would come in that were just for lack of better phrases, like churchy people would come in and immediately like leave. And I took so much pride in that. I thought, oh yes, this really is a place for all the hooligans, myself included, right? That's what the dream was. This is what the dream is. I wanted half the room always to be non-Christian and the other half to be Christian. What I didn't emphasize, which I should have, was that it's not that we don't want Christians. That's not the thing. What we do want and what we desperately need are Christians who are obsessed with reaching non-Christians. Not just Christians who are going to come in and consume. And by consume, I don't even mean that necessarily in a negative way, because sometimes we need to come in and we need to heal and we need to be refreshed so that we can then go back on mission and care about the people that are far from God. That's the dream, that's the vision. I botched that in the early beginning, so let me be very clear. I'm not anti-Christian at all. But I am praying diligently and faithfully that God send Christians and make us Christians that are deeply concerned and care about people that are not. That's it. And so our mission since the beginning of Haven has been essentially this, to together learn. That phrase is so important to me because it tells us out the gate, to be a part of this community means that you are not the scholar on how to do church. To be a part of this community does not mean you have everything figured out. That we are constantly learning. Learning what? How to create and cultivate an enjoyment in Christ in every area of life. That's what it's about. This venue is not supposed to be something that we have to do. This venue should be something that brings life to our souls, where we get to rest, where we get to encounter other people that are on the same journey as us, both in the wayward parts and both in the hard parts and the joyous parts and the chaotic parts. At the end of the day, this should bring value to your life, to your marriage, to your parenting, to your respect and awe of how beautiful Christ is. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to facilitate in a church like that. But you know what? We're learning how to do it together. So together learning how to cultivate an enjoyment in Christ in every area of life. Church is not something that we just do on Sundays. It's not just something that we go to because we have to, or God's going to think more highly of us. No, it's something we get to go to. But we go to it mainly because it impacts every nook and cranny of our life on the outside. That's what we're doing. That's the vision. That's where we're headed. So here's the question that I want to kind of land this with today, and that's this. Where is God leading us? Saying all those things. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to be as specific. I want to be wise and be as specific as I can with the information I have. Is that fair? At the same time, know this. There is still more crystallization to be done on these things. But if I could tap into what God's dream is for Haven for the next 12 months, here's where I think it is. I don't think anything about Haven's rhythms are bad. We have 3 main rhythms. We gather together, we get in groups together, and we do gospel work together. That's it. That's what we do. Gather, groups, gospel work. There's nothing wrong with those rhythms. What is needed is a revamping of those existing rhythms. So what we're about to do here, don't hear me, I'm not recreating the church playbook here. This is not it at all. I'm just asking, God, you're leading us to reach people far from you, people that don't trust Christians, to engage a culture in the most present way possible. So what are the next steps for us as a community if this is something that we want to commit to? If this is something that God is calling us to do, what are those next steps entail? So let's look at each different domain, each different rhythm, and let's look at ways of which I think God is calling us to revamp some of these things. The first is this, in regards to gatherings. One of the things I think that I have done a poor job on, very much so, that I ask for your forgiveness for, is not being diligent when it comes to membership. Now, membership is a scary word. I understand that. And immediately, you're thinking about all this money and, what are perks and things like that. Listen, biblical membership is something that great people disagree on. And I thought it would be easier just to not talk about it, but what I'm learning is that it's much easier just to talk about it and have a biblical position on it. Sorry, nevertheless. Revamping our membership rules is something that is absolutely imperative for our going forward. And this is why. Simply put, when we read the book of James tells us this. Hey, you want to be a leader? You want to be a teacher? You want to be a shepherd? That's great for you. But guess what? You're going to stand before God one day and be accountable for all of the people that God places inside the congregation. So call it selfish, call it just being a good steward. We need to know, your elders need to know, who are we shepherding? I want Haven to have lots of friends, and I want frequent flyers, and I want people that love our community and love hanging out with us to be engaged. But at the end of the day, we have got to know who's in, who's locking arms with us together and saying, God is calling me to this. I'm in, I'm going to do this. I don't want to just consume from the ministry. I want to be an owner of the ministry. Membership is the venue in which that happens. Membership is the way in which we lock arms together and we move forward knowing who's all on the boat. So listen to me. Here's an immediate action item for you. I want you to write down and/or pencil in, or if you have great memory, just remember. On June 5th, which is 3 weeks from now, on Sunday, we're going to have a member meeting. Now, some of you are already members. Some of you don't know if you're a member or not, which that's 100% my fault. But nevertheless, if you're already a member and or you want to be a member, I will strongly invite you to that dinner that we'll have Sunday, June 5th, where we'll talk about what membership looks like at Haven. What all does this entail? And then also, on the other side of that, you get to be partnering and telling us ways in which your gifts and skills and abilities can contribute to the place in which God is leading us. Listen, I have never hit the ceiling so hard and so fast in a job as with Haven. Spoiler alert, I cannot do this by myself. I am way out of my league when it comes to progression and these types of things. And you know what? Finally, after 4 years, I'm okay with that. I really am. Because you know what? Just in this room alone, there are so much more infinitely qualified people to help give direction and leadership to this, that I feel really good about just being the guy who gets to be the cheerleader. Dude, give me a Bible and I will tell you how great and how beautiful Jesus is. You show me a Disney movie, I'll do the same thing from the Disney movie. Nevertheless, there are gifts and skills and abilities that you guys have that can really help contribute to where God is leading us that I don't have. But I won't know unless I know who's locking arms with us. So June 5th, make plans to do that. The second thing is here's a popular item. And these are all in regards to gathering. So revamping membership. Second is this. Listen, like it or hate it, this location has been both a huge blessing and a huge challenge. Massively. But the more that we pray about and we think about direction and we think about where God has had us and where we've had a lot of favor with people that we're trying to connect with, it becomes more and more evident that a move is inevitable. That we've got to be in a location that's serving the mission of Haven, not the reverse. So to that end, we believe, and as we're praying through, and as we're learning together, that our place there's still room for us in the 77493 area. And so we are actively looking for, praying about, finding a situation, a location that will serve our mission to where we can offer an array of service times, where we can have a hub set up to do ministry and community events and things like that inside the zip code in which God hasn't really brought us out of fully, but at the same time we have been taking this hiatus, necessary hiatus on this side of town. So here's the plan with that. Chris S. Spitzenberger, who has offered to lead a team in finding a new location. Again, that way above my pay grade. I'm happily willing to let anyone who is involved, who is interested in that, be a part of that. So he's going to lead a team working very closely with Ben, who knows all of the numbers inside and out, and finding a space. Here's my dream for that. My dream is that we start the fall in the space we're going to be in for the next 3 to 5 years. But again, the only way that comes to fruition is if some of you join Chris's team and put in some of the work. That's what I mean by owning. Help him. So, when it comes to worship space, action item, join Chris's team. If you don't have his number or his contact information, I'm happy to let you have that or to give it to you. The third thing about gatherings that we are revamping and looking at is this, and it's truly been the most awkward part of Haven, in my opinion, and that's this: finances. My rule of thumb when we first started was this: I don't want anyone to ever be off-put by the gospel or how wonderful Jesus is because the church was asking for money. So I shifted hard. We never talked about money, ever. And if we did, it was super awkward, and you guys were there, you know what I mean. What I've learned and been convinced of through the scriptures is this: money is such a necessary part of our discipleship. Like there are few things in this world that grab our hearts like money does. And I have done a disservice to you and myself by not talking more directly about it. I think my motivation was fine, but the delivery I don't think worked. So here's where we are currently. We currently are hitting a deficit larger than we've ever hit since we started. And I can go into all the reasons for that at another point in time, but I guess for the short version is this: for a long time, people that you and I will never meet outside of Haven have been giving and supporting us because they believe in what we're doing, they believe in the cause, they believe that there's longevity here, they believe that this can be a hub in which people come to know Christ. So they've given. And you and I will never meet all of those people, but because of certain circumstances, because of COVID, those opportunities are few and far in between. So here's what I was thinking about and praying about for the past month or so. Like, God, is this you abandoning us? Is this a sign that this is over, it's run its course? Or is this an opportunity for us no longer to be the recipients of this generosity, but become the owners of generosity? Is this an opportunity for us to stack our hands and say, we are going to take ownership of this ministry. We're going to take ownership of this location. Because listen, just being very practical, listen to me, guys. New locations, staff hires, ministry, like it or not, guess what all those cost? Money. And so if we're going to invest and be owners in what God's doing in the next 12 months and 5 years down the line, like, money plays a huge part. So here's something I want you to consider about. Even at the risk of offending you, I still feel obligated. I feel obligated to say this. My encouragement and challenge for you to prayerfully consider over the next however long. There's no deadline on this. But I want you to consider increasing your giving to this ministry by 5%. Now some of you are thinking, oh, there is no way I'm doing that. How dare you say that? Listen to me. I'm not saying give me 5% of your money. I'm saying invest that in what God is doing in the future in this community. That 5% could be the difference between this location or that location, or hiring on 4 more Troys, or things of that nature. If we're going to invest in this community to expand our influence in serving and loving the people of Katy, Texas, finances are a part of it. Now listen to me at the same time. Some of you are thinking, like, there's no way I could do that. Okay. I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder and checking your bank account at all. That's not what this is about. But maybe you could do 1% more. Maybe you could do 0.5% more. Whatever you can do to become an owner and to really take part in what God is doing, God will bless that. So finances is a huge thing as well. So consider whatever amount you can. And again, let me also say this, like, I'm not telling you anything that I'm not doing myself at all. I'm not saying, hey, increase your giving and then without increasing my own as well. So we're in this together. The second rhythm, and I'll go a lot faster here. The second rhythm is groups, because I think this is the big question. After taking the formal survey and then also just informal, groups has been on our minds constantly. What's the plan? Where are we going? Listen, I have talked to you and I've heard you and I've observed you. And the question has been for the past, since we suspended the groups, was like, what kind of groups do we need? Not necessarily what kind of groups do we want right now, but what kind do we need? Which are going to benefit people the most? And you guys have spoken and you have been very gracious with your answers. And I think the direction and shift that we're going to make starting this summer is moving away from the neighborhood group model, moving to more of a growth group model. Growth group versus neighborhood group, some of the distinctives of that we can talk about at another time, but here's the deal. Intimacy and growth were among 2 of the top themes that kept coming through when anyone would talk to me about groups. I wanted to be real, I wanted to be raw, I wanted to have purpose. In my estimation, it's hard to get those things purely from co-ed groups. So the idea and model behind the growth group is that you get ladies together and you get men together and you pour into those individuals so that every relationship in their life is impacted better, having had that more real, more raw, intense group setting. We've been doing, as an experiment, Stephen, I should say, we've been doing that for, I don't know, a year, more than a year. And I can't tell you from my own perspective how the time spent with those guys has impacted every area of my life. I don't have a whole lot of venues, right, where I get to go be a participant, but that's been one. And so I get to be one of the guys, and it's just impacted every single nook and cranny, every relationship in my life. And I think we're at a point to where that's what we need. That you guys need to be encouraged. You need to be challenged. We all need that. So shifting from neighborhood groups to growth groups is something that's happening ASAP. So if you're a guy and you want to be a part of a group, contact Stephen, contact me, I'll contact Stephen I'll send you to Stephen. If you're a lady and you would like to be a part of a growth group, starting this summer, Elisa has offered to help host/facilitate a ladies version growth group, which I'm so excited about. So if that's something you're interested in doing, hey, sign up for that. If you want more questions, if you have questions about that or anything like that, we will definitely talk about that more during the membership dinner, but at the same time, just ask me about it, or ask Elisa. She'll actually know more about that. Last section, last rhythm is this. So we have gatherings, we have groups, we have gospel work. Just very quickly, there's lots of things in the pipeline that I'm very, very excited about. They've been little projects I've been working on here or there, but it's finally time. If we're going to go all out, it's time to unleash some of this stuff. So here's the thing. Here's my dream, which I believe is God's dream for Haven over the next 2 years. We have got to step up our service project availability and doing. I don't that's not very profound, but yeah. Like we need to Nike this thing and just do it, right? So coming up in the next 12 months, I have planned 2 different service projects in which we're engaging with the community. It could be with an existing partner that we already have, ministry partner, or it could be an additional partner. That is 100% up to all of us. And so I don't want to be the dictator over that. But nevertheless, one project coming up in the summer, maybe one in the fall, indoor towards the winter. And then the second thing is this. I think out of all of the questions, and I mentioned this earlier today, out of all of the questions on the survey that you guys filled out, the most interesting question to me was how people perceive you as far as, are you a leader at Haven? And do you know what overwhelmingly a large percentage of people said? Like that they strongly agree. Yes, people see me as a leader. Now that changes the conversation. That changes the conversation because if we have a room full of leaders, the way in which we go about leading is different. The conversation itself we're having is very different. So towards that end, if we have a bunch of leaders, it's time that we spend a season where we're training and equipping those leaders to be unleashed to do what God's calling them to do. So starting this summer, I'm going to launch something which I'm calling, for lack of better phrases, Haven University. Haven University is a special it's a cohort of anyone and everyone who wants to be a part of it, which specific purpose is to train you as a leader to do ministry in Katy, Texas. Now there's a theological component, there's a church history component, so there's educational, but there's also really practical things that we'll be going through as a cohort together as well. So let me say this as far as action steps when it comes to gospel work. Hey, if you're like a service-oriented person, if like if you're all about, man, Haven should be doing more service projects, Haven should be doing more this and that and this. First of all, bless your soul, like because we need people pushing us in that direction, right? Again, I'm the guy. Give me the Bible, and I'm going to tell you how great Jesus is. I'm not really great about seeing all the needs outside, but some of you are. It's your gift. We need you. And so if you're someone who's like, yes, service project, we could do this and this and this, will you please talk to me? Like, let's put something on the calendar. Let's do it. We're going to Nike this thing out this year. Let's do it. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're someone thinking, I am a leader. I would like to know more about what it looks like to be a leader here. Maybe Haven University starting this summer is something that you need to be a part of. Again, it's not all about just purely information. There's information involved, but at the same time, it's about preparing us to fill the spheres in which God has called us to do. So either of those are 2 great action steps. I'll skip 5 years from now for our meeting next week. Let me end with this, because now I think it's your turn. The music team is going to come up and play, and while they're playing, I want to invite you to something very specific this afternoon. I want you to consider all of the things that have been said, right? Here's what I'm asking you. Here's the takeaway that I'm asking you to remember. I'm asking you, if God is calling you to this particular church, to this particular community, I'm asking you to commit to being a member at Haven. I'm asking you to commit to being in a growth group. I'm asking you to generously, and even may it be sacrificially, raise your giving towards Haven's future. I'm asking you, if you're interested in finding a new location, new service times, if you're super passionate about that, man, join Chris's team. Or maybe the Haven University cohort is something that sounds intriguing to you. Tell me about it. Let's get it going. Let's start it. At minimum, if you're intrigued in being part of the future of Haven, please plan to be here June 5th as we talk more about specifics and details of that nature. Listen, I want to read you something really quickly. That I wrote when I was 13 years old. I don't know why I still have this. When I was 13 years old, I was learning how to do quiet times and journal and pray and things like that. And I wrote this as a 13-year-old Nathan. I was reading Joshua chapter 10, which is a brutal chapter. And he says, here's what I said. I said, here, really in Joshua, it's just a lot of killing for the Lord. Why would God have Joshua, and then I stopped and I say, what would God have Joshua and his men do if they were to show up in Katy, Texas today? And then I put this. I need to always pray for Katy. And we all need to pray to make it acceptable to God. Now listen, the theology is wonky in there, but the heart is what caught my attention. Because do you realize for 22 plus years, God has put on my heart to pray for Katy, Texas, to care for the people who live here, for those in the down and out, for the least, the lost, or left behind. Like, this is something that I've been praying for 22 years, and here's the sweet thing, if I may be so bold. Here's the really sweet thing that I'm coming to realize, that you guys are the answer to that prayer that I've been praying 22 plus years. That 22-year-old prayer has caused our lives to overlap. And I don't know if we should take that lightly. Haven has been a source of healing for all of us to one degree or another. And now, my friends, it's time for us to be the healers. Not because we're so great, but because Christ has been so great to us. Is it possible today, this afternoon, is it possible that God is calling you to experience Him at a deeper level? Is it possible He's calling you to join what He's doing here, not merely as a consumer, but as an owner? The Lord is with you, mighty men and mighty women. He's calling us to do something. Would you ask Him? So as the guys play, would you just pray? God, what do you want from me? What's the plan here? And He will answer immediately. Right? Would you please stand?